Hey everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is, even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun. I've noticed on their Instagram they do a lot of the Zoom kind of collabs. Is that catching on? Is that staying? Or is that harder to do?
It depends. So are we actually on the podcast now?
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you a great story about the ASCAP Songwriter of the Century, Craig Wiseman. And your friend, our former president, the great Lee Thomas Miller. So we're a few months into the Zoom thing, and it's a little weird because of the music part. You can change your settings, but there's a little bit of a delay. And, you know, I just don't believe there's any energy like personally being in the room. So I asked Lee Miller, I went, how's it going? He goes, it depends. So what are you talking about? And he names a couple writers. He goes, it just ain't working. And I said, he goes, but Wiseman, because Craig is known to be in the room. I'll be right back, Doug. And he never comes back. So he goes, we wrote 3 songs in a week. I've got him hostage. But I think a lot of people are doing it mainly for the convenience. If you live pretty far apart, or if you're collaborating with somebody in LA and you're in Nashville, so it still occurs frequently. And I think we've kind of figured out how to do it on Zoom.
Well, that is pretty cool. And again, for folks listening, and Bart Herbison, great friend, National Songwriters Association. It's just glad to have you back. But you know, as we just sit here talking, a lot's been going on. We haven't had. It's been about a year since I guess you've been on, and we've been, you know, you and I communicate. One tragedy. Let's get this one out of the way early, because I was going to talk to you about the Elvis movie. You and I actually had texted about the Elvis movie and some other things. But Lisa Marie Presley passing. A tragedy.
Fantastic story. So I used to work for the former congressman from Nashville, and I was always with him. We were in D.C. together. I was a rare aide that traveled to the district almost every time, but we find ourselves in different cities. He's in D.C., I'm in Nashville, and he calls me and goes, hey, sport, meet me at Stevens Aviation, which is the jet port. I'm like, Bob, you got a budget vote tonight. Bob Clement. We go round and round, and he said this to me twice. I probably deserved it 200 times. He goes, I'm the congressman. Quit asking me questions. Show up at the jet port. Well, I'm standing out there, and I immediately know what's happening because the U.S. Postal Service jet lands. Now, it so happens the Postmaster General, Marvin Runyon, former head of Nissan, was in Nashville. So we get on the plane. We go to Graceland. We land, and you know what a huge Elvis fan I am. I haven't revealed this publicly much. I meet a lot of people that wrote songs for Elvis or worked with him. I always win the argument because I have his logo tattooed on my left shoulder, TCB with the lightning bolt. That's dedication. So
there you go, baby. There you go.
We land and we go into Graceland for a private dinner, and there's only 8 or 9 of us. There's Tennessee Governor McWhorter, Congressman Clement, Congressman Don Sundquist, a couple of Postal Service board members, a photographer, and Mr. Runyon. So we get to eat dinner in Graceland at the dining room, and I'm just like pinching myself. But we're done with that by maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock, and the unveiling of the Elvis stamps that evening is at midnight. It's at 12:01 a.m., first stroke of the clock on the next day. And it's on his birthday, so that would have been January 8th, I think. So we have to kill some time, so we go, let's go over to the car museum. Now, it's all closed to the public, but there's thousands of Elvis fans outside Graceland. So we're in the car museum, and Priscilla walks in a back door. Now, Mr. Runyon had given, there are only 9 of these in existence, everybody at the dinner, a special Postmaster General commemorative, I don't really know what to call it, catalog. It's beautiful. It's got a embossed leather cover, all this stuff, and it's full of Elvis stamps, but Elvis memorabilia through the years. And Mr. Clement and I, you know what the word GERM means. You can't ask for autographs if you're in the industry. I can't go ask Tim McGraw for his autograph, although I want to every time. But I told Bob on the way in, I said, I'm GERMing. He said, what does that mean? I'm saying I'm taking mine in just in case there's an autograph. So we must have been living right. We're standing there. Priscilla stops. She signs our Elvis stamps. And this photographer in tow just showed up. So I've got a great picture of it. It's on my Facebook page. I posted it when Lisa died. Then it gets crazier. A tornado comes across the road just a few hundred yards from Graceland, right there on Highway 51. It knocks the power out temporarily. And this Elvis stamp unveiling's in a giant tent. They had seats for several hundred people. Thousands were in line. And they made everybody leave because it was unsafe. And they do the Elvis stamp thing at midnight. WTBS is there, so I think some of this is online. Only broadcast network there doing it live. And part of the tent was still down, so there were only 9 or 10 of us in that whole tent and the cameraman. So it's over pretty quickly, and Priscilla goes and talks to all the office holders on stage, but the very last thing, Lisa walks out. And I believe it was her first public appearance for the Presley estate. This was before Michael Jackson, before anything. And so she's kind of standing there forlorn, and I jump up on stage and I went, February 1st. And she looks at me like I'm a stalker, and she goes, that's my birthday. I said, it's my birthday. And that was my end. So we trade driver's license pictures. I felt like we had a moment, to be honest with you. Yeah. And so Lisa's all touchy-feely like I am. She's got her hand on my shoulder, and I feel this electricity. Somebody touches me, pulse through my body. So for a brief instant in time, I'm touching Priscilla and Lisa. And that was just a fantastic memory. I've still got those stamps. Side note, you know that when you travel, you receive a lot of things that are allowed under the gift ban. You'll get a commemorative shovel. I've still got mine from a funeral cemetery we opened. But Bob calls me one day and he goes, I've lost my Elvis stamps. And I went, hell no. And he found his, but one thing I wasn't giving him. So they hang over my mantle in my office at NSAI, but it was such a loss. And, you know, just, it was a loss. And I think everybody felt that, no matter what the circumstances were. I'm surprised Lisa was as regular as she was. Imagine growing up Elvis's daughter. I just can't imagine that. So, you know.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. And again, she sort of was on and off the radar. You know, like she'd appear a little bit, and then about like Priscilla, basically, though. You know, Priscilla, you'll see her, and then she don't see her. But, you know, really this past year, and it's really, you know, sort of eerie in a sense, the death occurred a couple of days after the Golden Globes with the Elvis award. But you and I talked about this offline. I don't think, in fact, I pretty much know we didn't talk about it on the podcast. But I've watched the Elvis movie. You and I were texting about this. And what sold it for me is that Priscilla, and then I've seen now since Lisa Marie and others, basically said, yes, this is, you know, Priscilla more than Lisa Marie. But I mean, Priscilla said, yeah, that Elvis would have approved of this, that this was pretty accurate. My thought, though, and I want to hear you from a diehard Elvis person, if you understood Elvis a little bit, the timeline of Elvis, the movie, you could follow the movie pretty good. If you didn't understand the timeline of Elvis, it would appear to me that they got things sort of out of place and it's harder to follow. Is that a fair statement, Bart?
I'll go even deeper, and I worship Elvis Presley. My uncle, the late Billy Pullen, I was somewhere between 4 and 5, and he had the singles. He pulled me into his den. They call me Barty. My family said, Barty listens to this. He played That's When Your Heartaches Begin, and I was around music the rest of my life. I'm in this job because he played me that record. So I like the movie for one reason and one reason only. It exposes a whole new generation of fans to Elvis. But most of that stuff never, ever happened. And if you'll Google errors or fact check the Elvis movie, it's pages and pages. And look, and I can understand why Priscilla didn't like the Colonel. The Colonel, there's a book, if you really want to read it, called The Colonel and Me, that accuses him of killing someone in his country of Hungary. He was 16 years old, working at the family store. He was sweet on a girl. Something bad happens. And history does show that he was an illegal immigrant. He went to work for a carnival that finally made its way from Europe into, I think it was Canada, and comes into the United States. One of the reasons he never would allow Elvis to play outside of the U.S. because he didn't have a passport and he wasn't going to let Elvis be away from him for that long. So there was some resentment, I think, from the family to the Colonel. But like the scene with B.B. King, a lot of these things, they just never happen. It's so factually incorrect. And it's not a little bit, it's dozens and dozens of things, all aimed at making the Colonel a villain, which he may have been. But I don't like it just because my sister and I are watching it the same night, and we must have sent 40 texts. This didn't happen. This was a different way. So that's my issue with it. However, a lot of people, even on my staff, they had no idea who Elvis was. And I know 2 of them have put If I Can Dream on the playlist. So for that reason, I'll take it, but it's not my favorite one.
Well, it was. And it was one of those things where, look, again, the over dramatization of the ride at the, when he shook his head, that which really makes it, again, it makes it really interesting to, for the the non Elvis person to say, okay, that's a little weird, kind of thing. But it was interesting that the Tom Parker stuff, it made me think, because if you think about it, Elvis didn't ever do a world tour. I mean, he went to Europe and as an army person, but he never did a world tour.
The cause the Colonel didn't have a passport. He was an illegal. He was not a legal citizen.
And that is just so wild.
And by the way, the book, The Colonel and Me, suggests that he was millions in debt to some of the Vegas casinos. It was not uncommon for him to lose 6-7 figures in a week. That's why Elvis got the contract at one of the hotels, the book alleges. But,
the movie did as well.
Yeah. But for instance, Elvis is there before the 68 comeback special, a couple days before, watching Bobby Kennedy get assassinated. Bobby got assassinated 6 months earlier, so it shows an inspiration for things. It's biopic fiction is the way I look at it. Now, I will credit Austin Butler.
Yeah.
Man, did he sound like Elvis Presley.
My understanding was he did the audio for that too. So
he did that.
Yeah.
He did that.
Know,
so he deserves all the accolades. But I'm an Elvis purist. So
Well, I think that for me, since we're sharing, different things, you and Lisa Marie share a birthday. Elvis and I share my birthday and his death day.
August 16th.
August 16th. He died on my birthday. And I told the story the other day on one of the podcasts about my next door neighbor, Betty, who, again, like you, loved Elvis and everything. And she came running across on my birthday party. He's dead. He's dead. We thought I thought her husband had died, and it was Betty talking about Elvis had died. And so, sharing this. So the last part where they actually showed real video of him in those last concerts where he was bloated. He was there.
Yes.
Some of those actually, those are memories are not memories for me. Those are actually, I saw those concerts. I saw those. So it was really, really interesting to see.
Well, one last Elvis plug in a story. Peter Guralnick's a controversial author. And he was very controversial when he wrote the John Lennon book and the Elvis book, too. There's 2 Elvis books, Careless Love and Last Train to Memphis. They're over 1,000 pages, and they're so thorough. It's like he was in the room. So he tells everything, good, bad, and different. And I particularly love a lot of the stories he told in the famous RCA Studio B across the street from my headquarters, the music.
Right.
And here's one. I got the privilege of knowing Chet Atkins a little bit. One of my mentors, the late Joe Talbot, took me to lunch at a place called, I forget what it was, Maud's down on Music Row. It's not there anymore. And Chet was there. They had a standing lunch every Friday they were in town. I couldn't make this up. He sat there playing his guitar at the table quietly. And I looked at Joe and he goes, that's why he's Chet Atkins. He plays everywhere. So Chet is the only major artist I've ever heard of that wanted a closing act. Chet went to bed at 8 o'clock if he could, 8:30. He was a country farmer, got up in the wee hours, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And so Elvis is showing up later, wants to record at 10, 11, 12, may not show up, sits in there and plays gospel songs all night. And Chet's just, he can't stay awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. So he calls Elvis's team and RCA and goes, look, I like the kid. And at that time, Nashville did not embrace Elvis. They threw him off the Grand Ole Opry. They didn't know what he was. But Chet liked him and saw that he was about to change music. But he said, I don't care. 11 o'clock tonight, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 songs. We do them and we're out. And if he's late, I'm gone. 11, 11:10, 11:15, no Elvis. So Chet starts to leave. And I think he may have been a teenager, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid named Felton Jarvis is a tape copy boy. And he throws him the keys and said, you do it. Elvis breezes in about 10 minutes later. They hit it off. They get the 4 or 5 tracks. And with a few exceptions, especially the movie stuff, he was his producer for the rest of his life, which means you get 4 points on every one of those Elvis records. So the Guralnick book, Careless Love and Last Train to Memphis, if you're an Elvis fan, get them. But warning, don't start them if you've got to get up the next morning. I made that mistake. You cannot put them down. And it's everything that ever happened, good or bad.
That's cool. Well, one of the things I want to inject here, and then we're going to get a couple other things for the start. We're going to start this as going to be a regular habit with us. We're going to get together with some new songwriters, some old songwriters, you and others, and we're going to do this, on a regular basis. So the podcast listeners will get to hear this. It's something that I'm looking forward to. But one of the things you and I share a lot of is we'll hear things and we'll text each other back and forth. And a few weeks ago, I guess it was, I was on a plane and I'm a nerd for those documentaries about drummers, musicians, and others. And I brought up Gordon Lightfoot, and I texted you about Gordon Lightfoot. Again, for most 50-something-year-olds, especially Gordon Lightfoot, okay, he may not as much. But for me, at record Edmund Fitzgerald, Sundown, all these. And so you had said he came and he is dating at a time a Catherine Evelyn Smith, who became infamous later on for being with Belushi.
Well, that's the song Sundown. She was with Belushi and allegedly injected him with that speedball the night he died. And she had a notorious drug-related background, allegedly. I'm doing the right thing here, but that's who the song was about. I got to tell you a Gordon Lightfoot story. So we have the world's largest songwriters festival, late March, early April.
And it's coming up again.
10 Pan South. We do one coming up. We do 100 shows, 400 writers in 5 nights. We take over the town and it's amazing. And one of my favorite parts is you never know who's going to show up. But we used to kick it off. We don't do it anymore for a lot of reasons with the Legend Show. And this night it was Gordon Lightfoot, Donna Summer, I think Kitty Wells. It's just this potpourri through time of fantastic songwriter artists. And I think Gordon would acknowledge this. Gordon, he's been doing this for 50-something years. So he agrees to do it. But look, he doesn't really have a relationship with us. He does it because of the other songwriters who are going to be on that bill. I think America was on that bill. It was an unbelievable show. And so it was a little high maintenance. Gordon goes, I need private jets. I need this. And we just can't do it. So he ends up paying his own way down there. And it was in the tens of thousands. And go to my dressing room, whatever, until the show started. And he walks out of the dressing room. I saw him watch Donna Summer. I saw him watch Kitty Wells. And he started crying. And he goes, Bart, This is why I did it in the first place. I hadn't felt this in years. And so he does his gig, stunning. He goes back and calls me the next morning in Canada, and we're both a little weepy. And he goes, at least for a moment, it took me back to why I did this in the first place. And that just meant so much to me because, as you know, we're a songwriter town. And the artistry and the staging and the big stadiums and the smoke bombs. But when it's just you and a guitar, there's something emotional about that, and Gordon felt it. I am proud we made him feel that.
That is so cool. Folks, Tin Pan Alley's coming up later this year. Go to, where do they go, Bart, if they want to know information about it?
It's Tin Pan South, and we do South. We pay homage, though, to Tin Pan Alley, the old Brill building where the profession really started, tinpansouth.com.
tinpansouth.com. All right, well, cool. And what's the dates on that again this year?
It's the last week in March. I don't have them right in front of me, but the shows start on that Tuesday. We have a 2-day educational event. We do some special programming. The Songwriters take over Nashville for a week.
If you've never been, folks, you need to go. If your only experience is watching on TV or Bluebird or country, you need to get up there for that. I may even have to talk Lisa into getting up there for that one again in Jordan. But which brings me, I'm traveling all the time now. Music always is one of those things that brings us back around. And for me, whether it's a early morning flight on Delta, or whether it's a drive, or it's the midnight train to Georgia, it is always good to get back home to Georgia. And you have an interesting take on midnight train to Georgia.
Oh, I see you wearing the shirt, and I mean, what a route. Go Dogs. And so I don't know if people know this. We've gone through spells. When I came to Nashville, Arkansas, it was a bunch of writers from Arkansas owned everything. Then up 5 minutes with Kentucky, then the Carolinas. But 15 years ago, a lot of your pals, Dallas Davidson, Red Akins, the Peach Pickers,
Ben Hayslip,
Ben, Luke, they all come to town, and they have had a 15-year run at this. A kid named Cole Taylor had 2 number ones before he ever moved here because he's part of that Georgia posse. So I love it, but people are ready for another state, I think. They have literally owned this for a long time.
I'm going to get, I tell you what, I'm going to have Hayslip in with this, but I know that Lance and the others will get on them on that one. So, so Midnight Train to Georgia, what you got?
I do this thing, Tennessean.com. It's the Tennessean newspaper, but it's on the whole Gannett newspaper chain. I do a thing for them that appears in the Sunday paper called Story Behind the Song. And one of my top 3 bears the name of your state. It's Midnight Train to Georgia. So you're probably a little too young to remember. I'm a little older than you, but the year Joe Namath was All-American quarterback at Alabama. Number 2 was the late, great Jim Weatherly at Ole Miss. And he just got beat to death. I mean, he had a couple knee operations. He would have been All-American if he'd had a line. But Jim's second string All-American. Vince Lombardi calls him, begs him to become a Packer. He goes, I'm not playing football. I'm going to LA. I'm going to be a singer-songwriter. And he did that. So he moves to Los Angeles, cannot get arrested. So some of the big stars find out he's that Jim Weatherly. And he did this reluctantly. They get up a flag football game every Sunday. The Stars played. And then pretty soon it became Jim had to call everybody to get the game together on Sundays. So one of the regulars was Lee Majors, who was starring in a show called The $6 Million Man.
You got it for Christmas back in the day,
Yeah. And he was living with Farrah Fawcett, Charlie's Angel, the poster girl, Farrah Fawcett. So Jim calls like late on a Saturday evening, like, Farrah's Lee going to play tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. He's not here, and I'd love to talk, Jim, but I'm late. I got to catch a midnight plane to Houston. And Jim goes, cha-ching. So he quickly writes this fantabulous song called Midnight Plane to Houston. Well, this is just an incredible story about how this became something we know. So you pitch a song, you record it yourself. It's called a demo, and you or your team play it for artists. Well, Jim's at some nondescript building. It's kind of a rehearsal place somewhere out in the LA area. And he's playing it for an act that he didn't even remember. Sissy Houston, Whitney's mother, is in another room next door, and they can hear this thing kind of through the wall. but they can't get there, and they run around the building. Takes them 5 or 10 minutes to stop the tape, get over there. Jim's gone, and they're on little bitty 3-inch reel tapes back then. One of these things, but super tiny, and they throw it in a bushel, 55-gallon cardboard drum. So they get over there and they have to search through the tapes. They finally found it. Sissy goes crazy over it, but she calls Jim, and to quote her, she says, "Look, I was raised a poor black girl in the South. I never flew on a plane in my life. Do you mind if I change?" And he goes, "Change it." And she changed it to Midnight Train to Georgia. She put it out, and Gladys heard it, Gladys Knight. It would never happen this day. It was not uncommon back then, as you know, to have 2 or 3 versions of the same song on the charts. And Gladys's people go, "What else? You got anything else?" He had a couple songs called "Neither One of Us Wants to Be the First to Say Goodbye," and "You're the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me." So that's the story of Midnight Plane to Houston / Midnight Train to Georgia. And I love that. One of my favorites.
Before we break up here, we got a few more minutes left. And in the future, we're going to break these much more, go longer. We wanted to give everybody a good indication of what we're going to be doing here. And you and I could talk stories all day. In this, we've seen some improvement for songwriters coming out of the pandemic, coming out of, now touring. I mean, there's a lot of things. We've seen some good, stepping out of music modernization and then getting into some court decisions, which have been good. Where do you see it right now? Is it where we hoped it would be a few years ago when we were sitting in the office? Are we moving in the right trajectory?
We're moving in the right direction, but I know you hate being bragged on, but I'm going to take a minute. The way bills pass, chairmen get their name on it, and that's just the way it works, and there was some input. But first of all, your ascension. You're there. Here's our story. You call me, and I would have called you because the caucus has put you on the Judiciary Committee. You're on my list to talk to. First appointments to see. But you call me unsolicited. I don't know how you got my number. and you explain that how music took you through poor times. Your daddy was a state trooper, and music was your window to the world. And you said, "I'm your guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, you proved to be the industry's guy, but especially songwriters." In a time where I'm not sure that served you very well politically, because the industry is crazy. It's hard to come to unanimity. And you had a political philosophy, and you stuck to it, and you did it well. However, especially on the Judiciary Committee, which you led, you were the ranking member after 4 years? Unheard of. Unheard of. So I'm saying all this because I hope you seek another office or some regulatory agency at some point. We need you in our government, Doug Collins. Politics aside, you got things done, not only with your jail reform bill. People don't understand. We passed the House and Senate unanimously. That was nothing compared to passing the House Judiciary Committee. When we passed that, I knew we were home because by its nature, it's a very confrontational, politicized committee. But you reached out to another relatively new member who is now the ranking Democrat on Capitol Hill in the minority, Hakeem Jeffries. Somehow you kept your political philosophy intact and did your job, but y'all found that the unanimity that was music. And we don't have any of the stuff we've got now without you and Hakeem Jeffries figuring out how in all that noise to still work together on things where you could find agreement. So the Music Modernization Act changed the way songwriters set rates. The quick 30-second primer, there's 2 copyrights when somebody hears a song. There's the song that a songwriter writes, and then there's the record somebody makes of it, even if they are the writer, like Taylor Swift records her own song. The record is under minimal government control, while the song is still under government control, and that goes back to 1909. But you managed to pass the Music Modernization Act that changes the rules. The rules impact trials. We've been in 2 trials for 9 years. The short version, we've won the largest pay raise for songwriters in history, 44%. That comes out of every dollar. So Apple just raised their price by $1. We believe with what we did, and I got to credit your friend David Israelite with the National Music Publishers Association. We participated, but they were the quarterbacks. We project in the single digit to pushing double digit billions just over the next 5 years. A lot of that depends on how streaming grows, but it's growing faster than we thought, and if other services raise prices. But your work has helped us because we settled a second trial because the rules were going to be more favorable. It helped us get to this point. Now, we're still not there the same kind of money radio pays, but if streaming continues to grow over the next decade the way it does, you've added a couple zeros to the Songwriters check every quarter, and we're grateful for it, and we will never forget that. If we had a Mount Rushmore in Nashville, you'd be on it. You really would be in any songwriter town. And I'm very grateful. And it wasn't hard. It was hard. I mean, it was your hardest part's navigating within the dang industry. And when we did that
true.
I'm just saying. So.
Yeah, it was. Bart, you're too kind. I mean, but I do remember lots of conversations, yelling in airports, talking to people, and just trying to get stuff done. So but it was worth it.
Well,
overall.
You led us. And that does not go unnoticed because we needed somebody to lead us through that. And I don't use the word wrongly, wilderness, because it was.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I've never been a part of a bill in which I had to beg the people who benefited the most to be a part of it.
Right.
It was really there, but it is there now. Folks, look, this is a passion project for me. We're going to do this more often. You're going to get to see here on the podcast. You're going to get to see Bart. You're going to get to see new songwriters. You're going to see old songwriters. You've been on there. We've had our friends on here before. And you've seen that we've had some of our best responses to some of our music podcasts, and because it touches everybody. It goes back to what I'm saying. The songwriter itself, it comes out of the heart into the head and down through the hands and through the fingers. And I think when that comes out, it touches lives, and that's what we have to be a part of.
Well, they should watch your speech on YouTube, Doug Collins' Final Day of the Music Modernization Act, because your oratory helped get us where we needed to get, because what songs are about, they're supposed to move us, and you moved us with your words, Doug Collins.
Well, that is what we're going to continue to do, and Bart, you're a blessing to me and my family. Thanks so much for being a part today, and like I said, this is for those who are listening, this is not going to be ever anything. We got this sort of schedule down. You're going to be more and more of this as we go, so we're excited to have you. Bart, go out having a great day, and look forward to talking to you again.
Love you, man, and I mean that.
Hey folks, MyPillow is excited to bring to you their biggest bedding sale ever. For a limited time, you're going to get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, a set of pillowcases for only $9.98, and rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. $99.99, get a mattress pillow topper. Look, they come in all sizes. They got all kinds of stuff, blankets. They've got duvets. They've got quilts. They got comforters. They got body pillows. They got bolster pillows. They got all at big, big discounts. And also, they're extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1, 2023, making them the perfect gift for your friends, your family, and for everyone you know. Folks, and just from a personal note here, I have the Giza Dream Sheets. They're on my bed right now. I slept on them last night. Some of the best sheets that we and Lisa and I have ever owned. They are worth, at this price, they're a steal. My wife and I have bought bed sheets, linens at much higher cost. It's supposedly much higher quality. These from MyPillow are at the highest of quality, and at a price like this, you can't beat it. So go now to MyPillow.com, use promo code Collins, COLLINS, or call 1-800-986-3994, and you'll get huge discounts on all the MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, and get all your shopping done while qualities last. And remember, put in that promo code Collins for these discounts.